Welcome back to Vietnamese Vixens. Today's story comes from a place a lot of you might recognize that moment when love collides with culture, when good intentions meet impossible expectations, and when you realize that sometimes, no matter what you do, you'll be cast as the villain. This is Eric's story. He's 34, from Malmö, Sweden. He thought he'd found his soulmate in the chaos of Hanoi's old quarter. He thought he'd finally escaped the loneliness that had been eating him alive back home. He thought this time, finally, he'd gotten it right. But then her family's secret surfaced, a debt that would test everything he believed about love, loyalty, and what he owed to the people who'd welcomed him into their lives. And when he made his choice, the choice he thought was right, the choice he thought was reasonable, he became the bad guy in everyone's story but his own. Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. And if you've ever been caught between love and impossible expectations, hit that like button and subscribe, because you're going to feel every word of what comes next. My name is Eric, and I need to tell you about the best and worst year of my life, because I'm still trying to figure out if I made the right choice, or if I destroyed something beautiful because I couldn't understand what was really being asked of me. I'm from Malmö. If you don't know it, it's Sweden's third largest city down in the south, right across from Copenhagen. It's gray a lot of the year, not in a romantic, moody way, just gray. Cold. The sun sets at 3 in the afternoon in winter, and you spend half your life in this weird twilight that makes you feel like you're living in a waiting room. I had a good job there, software development for a fintech company, fully remote even before the pandemic made it normal. I had an apartment with those floor-to-ceiling windows that Scandinavian architects love, minimalist furniture, everything clean and organized, and absolutely fucking empty. My girlfriend of 6 years, Anna, left me about 8 months before all this started. We'd been talking about marriage, kids, the whole trajectory. Then one night over dinner pasta, I remember it was pasta, some recipe she'd found on Instagram, she told me she didn't feel anything anymore. Not anger, not resentment, just nothing. She said it like she was describing the weather. I don't feel anything when I look at you, Eric. I think I haven't for a while. We'd become roommates who occasionally had passionless sex. She moved out 2 weeks later. Very civilized, very Swedish. Very devastating in its quietness. I threw myself into work for a few months, but remote work in an empty apartment is a special kind of solitude. You can go days without meaningful human contact. Your coworkers are just voices on Zoom calls, little squares on a screen. I'd finished my workday and realized I hadn't spoken out loud since morning. The silence started getting to me. That heavy, pressing silence of Scandinavian winter evenings. So I did what a lot of people do when their lives feel too small. I bought a plane ticket, one way to Bangkok. I had savings, I had a laptop, I had nothing tying me down. I figured I'd work remotely from Southeast Asia for a while, see where things went. Maybe I'd find myself, maybe I'd just find better weather. Either way, I needed out. I spent a month in Thailand, another month bouncing through Cambodia. It was fine. Beautiful temples, great food, the usual backpacker trail. But I felt like a tourist, an observer. I wasn't connecting with anything, just consuming experiences and moving on. Then I flew to Hanoi, and something shifted. Hanoi hit different. It wasn't the sanitized, tourist-friendly version of Asia. It was loud and chaotic and overwhelming in the best way. The traffic alone, millions of motorbikes flowing through intersections with no apparent rules, somehow never crashing. This beautiful collective choreography of controlled chaos. The old quarter, with its narrow streets, each one named after what they used to sell centuries ago. Silk Street, Silver Street, Basket Street. The smell of street food everywhere, all the time. Feast simmering at 5 in the morning, banh mi stalls. The sweet smell of coffee dripping slowly through those metal filters into glasses of condensed milk. The heat was oppressive, especially coming from Swedish winter. But I loved it. I loved sweating through my shirts. I loved the energy, the noise, the feeling that life was happening all around me instead of passing me by. I rented a small apartment in Tai Hien, the West Lake area, popular with expats but still Vietnamese enough to feel real. I set up my laptop, got a Vietnamese SIM card, found a routine. Morning coffee at a cafe overlooking the lake, work until afternoon, then I'd wander. Just walk for hours, getting lost in the maze of streets, learning the rhythm of the city. That's where I met Lynn. 3 weeks into my Hanoi stay, at a cafe near Hoan Ky Man Lake in the Old Quarter. It wasn't a touristy spot, mostly locals. Old men playing chess, students studying with textbooks spread across tiny tables. I was there working on my laptop, nursing an iced coffee that cost about 30,000 dong, maybe $1.20, when she sat down at the table next to me. She was beautiful, but not in the obvious way that makes you immediately stare. She had this quiet elegance, dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, minimal makeup, wearing business casual like she'd just come from work. She ordered in Vietnamese, pulled out a book, started reading. English book, one noticed. Kazuo Ishiguro, Never Let Me Go. I don't usually approach women in cafes. It feels intrusive, like you're interrupting their peace. But something made me say, good book. Just that, simple. She looked up, and her smile was careful but warm. You've read it? Yeah. Destroyed me. We started talking. Her name was Lynn, she was 28, worked at a bank doing something with international accounts. Her English was excellent, with that precise grammar that comes from formal education rather than casual learning. She'd studied in Singapore for a year. She asked what brought me to Hanoi, and I gave her the abbreviated version. Work, travel, needed a change. You're running away, she said, but not unkindly, just observant. Maybe. Is that bad? No. Everyone runs sometimes. The question is what you're running toward. We talked for 2 hours. She had to leave for a family dinner, but before she went, she wrote her number on a napkin, actual paper, actual pen. If you want to see more of the real Hanoi, she said, not the tourist version, let me know. I texted her the next day. We met that weekend. She took me to places I'd never have found, a tiny bun shoe place in a neighborhood with no English signs, where the owner knew her family. A temple tucked away in a residential area where old women were doing their evening prayers. We walked around the lake as the sun set, and she told me about growing up in Hanoi, how the city had changed, how it was caught between tradition and this rush toward modernization. What struck me was that she didn't treat me like a walking wallet. I'd been approached by women in other cities, and there was always this transactional vibe, this immediate angling toward what I could provide. Lynn split the bill. She insisted. When I tried to pay for dinner, she actually got annoyed. I invited you, she said. I pay. We started seeing each other regularly, a few times a week at first, then almost every day. She had a life, work, friends, family obligations, but she made space for me. We'd meet after she finished work, walk around the city, try different street food, talk about everything. She was curious about Sweden, about my life there, but not in that how can I get there way. Just genuinely interested. I found myself telling her things I hadn't told anyone. About Anna. About the loneliness. About feeling like I'd spent my 20s and early 30s building a life that looked good on paper but felt hollow. She listened without judgment, without trying to fix anything. She just heard me. In Vietnam, she said one night as we sat by the lake, we have this concept, bo yen. It's hard to translate. Like fate, but specifically for relationships. The idea that people are connected by invisible threads, and when you meet someone you're supposed to meet, you just know. You feel it. Do you feel it? I asked. Too direct, very un-Swedish of me, but the heat and the foreign city made me bolder. She looked at me for a long moment. I think so. Maybe. It's scary. Why scary? Because I don't know your threads yet, where they lead, if they're strong enough. 2 months in, she took me to meet her family. They lived in Gia Lam district, outside the city center, in a neighborhood that felt working class but stable. Her family ran a small restaurant, nothing fancy, just a neighborhood place serving traditional Vietnamese food. Her father, Tuan, was in his early 60s, stocky, with weathered hands and a big laugh. Her mother, Huang, was tiny and energetic, constantly moving, constantly serving food. Her younger brother, Min, was 24, working at the restaurant while studying part-time. They welcomed me like I was already part of the family. The table was covered with dishes, spring rolls, grilled pork, sour soup, rice, endless plates. Her mother kept putting food on my plate, saying, "Yin yi, eat, eat." Her father asked about Sweden, about my work, told stories about Hanoi in the old days. Min wanted to practice his English, asked me about football, about Swedish bands. No one asked about money. No one asked how long I was staying or what my intentions were with Lynn. They just treated me like a guest, like someone worth welcoming. I went back several times over the next few months, sometimes with Lynn, sometimes alone when she was busy with work. I started helping out at the restaurant. A little, nothing major, just clearing tables, chatting with customers who wanted to practice English. Her father taught me how to make bún riêu, this crab noodle soup that takes hours. Her mother laughed at my terrible Vietnamese pronunciation, but corrected me gently. I felt like I'd found something I didn't know I was looking for. Not just Lynn, but this whole ecosystem. A family that was warm and present, a city that felt alive, a version of myself that wasn't just going through motions. 6 months after arriving in Hanoi, I made a decision. I was staying long term. I talked to my company, formalized my remote arrangement, got a business visa. I rented a proper apartment, a one-bedroom in a newer building near Tai Yi Hung, with actual heating and air conditioning, not just a short-term furnished place. I bought furniture. I committed. Lynn moved in with me a month later. We talked about it carefully. She was traditional in some ways, worried about what her family would think, about reputation. But her parents liked me, and she was 28, not a teenager. We made it work. Life fell into this beautiful rhythm. Wake up together, morning fee from the place downstairs. Work while she was at the bank, meet for lunch sometimes. Evenings exploring the city or cooking together. Weekends taking trips. Halong Bay, Sapa, Ninh Bien. I was learning Vietnamese seriously now, taking lessons twice a week. The language is hard as hell, all those tones, but I was getting there. I could order food, have basic conversations, understand more than I could speak. Her family treated me like a son. Her father started calling me Conrao, son-in-law. Her mother would send us home from family dinners with containers of food. Min and I became genuine friends, grabbing beers, talking about life. I thought about proposing. I looked at rings. I imagined a future, maybe splitting time between Vietnam and Sweden, raising kids bilingual, building something real. Then one Sunday afternoon, in month 9, everything changed. Lynn had gone to visit her parents, something she did most Sundays. I was home, working on a project, when she came back early. I heard the door open and knew immediately something was wrong. The way she closed it, too quiet, too careful. She stood in the doorway of the living room, and her eyes were red, swollen from crying. Her whole face was different, like she'd aged years in a few hours. "We need to talk," she said, and her voice cracked. "There's something I should have told you a long time ago." She sat down on the couch, and I sat next to her, my stomach already nodding. You know that feeling when you know something bad is coming, but you can't imagine what it is, so your mind just cycles through every possibility? I was thinking health problems, visa issues. Maybe she'd been offered a job somewhere else. Maybe her family didn't actually approve of us and had finally said something. "My father has a problem," she said, staring at her hands. "A gambling problem. We've been dealing with it for years, trying to hide it, trying to manage it, but it's gotten bad. Really bad." The words felt surreal. Her father, Tunda. The man who'd taught me to make soup, who'd laughed at my pronunciation, who'd called me son. I tried to picture him in some underground casino and couldn't make the image work. "What kind of gambling?" I asked, because I didn't know what else to say. "Cards mostly, bai." "There are these games, illegal ones, in the back rooms of cafes, in people's houses." He started small, years ago, just friendly games with neighbors. But it became more, higher stakes. He'd win sometimes, enough to make him think he could win big, and then he'd lose it all, and more. She was speaking quickly now, like she'd been holding this in for so long that it was spilling out. "We tried to stop him. My mother hid money. Min and I took over the restaurant finances. But he'd find ways. Borrow from friends, take cash from the register when we weren't looking, pawn things." "How much?" I asked. She took a breath. "He owes 500 million dong." I did the math in my head. At roughly 25,000 dong to the dollar, that was about 20,000 US dollars. In Swedish kroner, around 220,000. It was a lot of money, but not impossible. Not life-ruining for me anyway. But for them, for a family running a small neighborhood restaurant in Gia Lam, it was catastrophic. Who does he owe it to? Bad people, not a bank. Private lenders. The kind who come to your business and make threats. They've been to the restaurant 3 times this month. They told my mother if we don't pay, they'll burn it down. They're not bluffing, Eric. These people don't bluff. Her voice broke on my name, and she started crying again, and I pulled her close. She felt so small against me, shaking. This strong, composed woman, who handled international accounts at a bank, who never seemed rattled by anything, was falling apart. "Why didn't you tell me before?" I asked quietly. "Shame," she said into my shoulder. "So much shame. In Vietnamese culture, this kind of thing, it's not just personal, it's family disgrace. We keep it hidden. We handle it ourselves. And I didn't want you to see us this way. I didn't want you to think less of my father, less of us." I wanted you to love us for who we are, not pity us for our problems. I wouldn't have. You would have seen us differently. You know you would have. And maybe you wouldn't have stayed, wouldn't have wanted to build a life with someone whose family is broken like this. I didn't know what to say to that, because maybe she was right. Maybe if she'd told me in month 2, before I'd fallen in love with her, before I'd become attached to her family, I would have seen it as a red flag and backed away. The thought made me feel guilty and honest at the same time. What's the plan? I asked. How are you handling it? We're trying to sell the restaurant. My mother has been talking to buyers, but we won't get what it's worth. Not in a forced sale. Maybe 300 million if we're lucky. We'll still owe 200 million, and we'll have no income. My salary helps, but it's not enough to support everyone and pay off debt. Min makes almost nothing. My father can't work anywhere else. He's too old, no education beyond middle school. We're trapped. We sat there for a long time. The apartment was quiet except for the distant sound of traffic from the street below. The sun was setting, that golden light coming through the windows, and it felt wrong that the light could be so beautiful while Lynn was breaking. I'm not asking you for anything, she said finally, pulling back to look at me. Her eyes were fierce despite the tears. I just needed you to know, because it's affecting me, affecting us. I've been distracted, stressed, and you've noticed, I know you have. And we're building a life together, so you deserve to know what's happening. Okay, I said. Okay, let me think about this. Let me figure out how to help. Eric, I'm not saying I have answers. I'm just saying let me think. She nodded, and we spent the rest of the evening in this weird limbo, ordering food we barely ate, watching a movie neither of us paid attention to. She fell asleep early, exhausted from crying, and I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning. The next 2 weeks were heavy. Lynn was different. Quiet, withdrawn, like part of her was always somewhere else. She'd go visit her family more often, come back looking more defeated each time. Her mother called constantly, conversations in rapid Vietnamese that I could only partially follow, but I heard the tears in her mother's voice even through the phone. Then Min showed up at our apartment one evening. Lynn was still at work. He'd never come by alone before, and I knew immediately why he was there. We sat on the balcony, and I got us beers from the fridge. He drank half of his before speaking. You know about my father, he said. Not a question. Yeah. The men came again yesterday. They brought a can of gasoline, set it on the counter. Didn't say anything, just left it there and walked out. My mother hasn't slept since. I felt my chest tighten. Jesus. She's talking about selling our apartment too, the one we live in. It's the only thing we own besides the restaurant. But even if we sell both, it might not be enough. And then where do we go? We have nothing, Eric, nothing. He wasn't looking at me, just staring out at the lake in the distance, the lights starting to come on as evening fell. You're part of this family now, he said quietly. My parents love you. Lynn loves you. You've been at our table, eaten our food, laughed with us. In Vietnam, that means something. Family helps family. That's how we survive. There it was. The ask that wasn't quite an ask. The cultural weight of obligation wrapped in relationship. I know this is hard, he continued. I know you're foreign. You have different ways. But here, when family is in crisis, everyone contributes what they can. It's not charity, it's what family means. Min, I started, but I didn't know how to finish. He was right and wrong at the same time. Right about what family meant in his culture. Wrong about what he was asking, being simple or fair. He finished his beer and stood up. Just think about it. Think about what family means, what Lynn means to you. After he left, I did what I probably should have done earlier. I reached out to expat friends, people who'd been in Vietnam for years, who'd married Vietnamese women, who understood the cultural landscape better than I did. I met with James, a British guy who'd been in Hanoi for 8 years, married to a Vietnamese woman, 2 kids. We grabbed coffee in Tai He, and I laid it out for him. How much is the debt? He asked. 500 million dong. He whistled. That's substantial. And it's gambling debt to private lenders? Yeah. Mate, I'm gonna be straight with you. This is a test. Maybe not a conscious one. Maybe Lynn genuinely loves you, and her family is genuinely in crisis, but it's still a test. If you pay this debt, you become the family bank, forever. There will always be another crisis, another uncle who needs help, another situation where you're expected to contribute because you're the foreigner with money. But what if I don't pay? What if I let her family lose everything? That's the guilt talking. Her father created this debt, not you. Her father's addiction is not your responsibility. And if you're serious about Lynn, about a future with her, You need to establish boundaries now. Otherwise, you'll spend your whole life being drained dry, resenting her family, resenting her eventually. I met with another guy, David, American, been in Vietnam for 12 years. He had a different take. If you love her and you want to marry her, this is what signing up for a Vietnamese family means, he said. It's not like the West where everyone's independent. Family is everything here, and that comes with obligations. I've helped my wife's family multiple times. Medical bills, business problems, education costs. That's just how it works. You're not just marrying her, you're marrying into a whole system. But what about enabling the father's gambling? That's real. That's a concern. But maybe you attach conditions. He gets treatment. The family gets financial counseling, whatever. But if you flat out refuse to help, you're telling Lynn and her family that you're not really committed, that when things get hard, you'll bail. Two completely opposite perspectives, both from guys I trusted, both with years of experience. I felt more confused than before. I talked to Lynn that night, really talked, for the first time since she'd told me. Your brother came by, I said. I know. I told him not to. He's scared. Your whole family is scared. I know, she said. Her voice was flat, exhausted. But I meant what I said. I'm not asking you for money. This is our problem. But you want me to help. Even if you're not asking, you want it. She was quiet for a long time. Then, of course I want you to help. You're the person I love, the person I'm building a life with. My family is drowning, and you have a life raft. Of course, some part of me wants you to throw it to them, but I also know that's not fair. I know you have your own life, your own money, your own values about what you owe to people, so I'm trying not to ask. I'm trying to respect your choice. But if I don't help, you'll resent me. I don't know, she said honestly. Maybe. Or maybe I'll understand. I don't know yet because we're not there yet. I spent 3 more days thinking. I looked at my savings. I had about 800,000 SEK saved up. Maybe $75,000. Money I'd accumulated over years of living frugally in Sweden, of remote work with no major expenses. The gambling debt would take about a quarter of it. Not devastating, but significant. It would delay plans I'd had. Maybe buying an apartment somewhere. Maybe starting a business. Maybe having a financial cushion for kids someday. But I also thought about Lynn's mother's face when those men brought gasoline into her restaurant. About losing their home, their business, everything they'd built. About what that would do to Lynn, watching her family destroyed while her foreign boyfriend sat on savings that could help. I made a decision. Not the decision Min wanted. Not the decision David recommended. A compromise. I sat Lynn down on the couch, the same spot where she'd first told me, and I laid it out. I'll help with half, I said. 250 million dong. About $10,000. It's enough to keep the immediate danger at bay, but it's not enabling your father completely. Your family needs to come up with the other half, sell the restaurant if they have to, but contribute. And there have to be conditions. Your father gets help for the gambling addiction, real help, therapy, whatever exists here. And I need to know this isn't the beginning of endless requests. I watched her face as I spoke. Relief first, then something else. Disappointment? Hurt? I couldn't quite read it. Half, she repeated. It's what I can do and still feel okay about it. I want to help Lynn, but I can't be the solution to everything. This has to be shared. She nodded slowly. Okay. I'll talk to my family. Are you upset? I don't know what I am, she said quietly. I'm grateful. But also, it feels like you're negotiating. Like this is a business transaction instead of family helping family. It kind of is a business transaction, though. Your father's debt is a business problem. No, she said, and there was an edge to her voice I hadn't heard before. It's a family crisis. And you just told me you're willing to help, but only halfway. You're putting a price on how much you care. That's not fair, isn't it? You have enough to solve this completely. You could make this go away. But you're choosing not to because, what? Principle? Fear? You don't trust us? I don't trust that paying off the full debt will actually solve anything, I said, hearing my voice get defensive. Your father's an addict. If I pay this, he'll just gamble again, rack up more debt, and we'll be right back here in a year. You don't know that. Statistics know that. Gambling addiction doesn't get fixed by erasing debt. It gets fixed by treatment and accountability. We were fighting now, really fighting for the first time. Her face was flushed, her hands gesturing sharply. You don't understand how things work here, she said. You don't understand what this means to my family. You're thinking like a Westerner, like everything is individual responsibility. But here, we carry each other. We share burdens. And you're telling me you'll share half a burden, like you're tipping at a restaurant. I'm trying to help without being stupid about it, I shot back. I'm trying to support you while also being realistic about addiction and boundaries, and not setting a precedent where I'm the family ATM forever. Family ATM, she repeated, and she laughed, but it was bitter. Is that how you see us? A family trying to rob you? No, Jesus, that's not what I... You know what my mother said when I told her you might help? She cried. She said you were a good man, a blessing. She thanked God for bringing you to us. And now I have to go back and tell her you'll help, but only halfway, and only with conditions, and only if we prove we're worthy of your generosity. Lynn, I need some air, she said, standing up. I need to not look at you right now. She grabbed her bag and left, the door closing with a quiet click that somehow felt louder than if she'd slammed it. I sat there in the empty apartment, the city noise filtering in from outside, and wondered if I'd just made the right choice or destroyed everything. She came back 3 hours later. We didn't talk about it that night. She showered, got into bed, turned away from me. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to her breathe, wondering if she was actually asleep or just pretending. The next morning, she went to her parents' house before work. When she came home that evening, she told me they'd accepted. They'd take the $10,000. Her father would sell the restaurant. Her mother was already looking at cheaper apartments in districts farther from the city center. Min would try to find full-time work. They'd make it work. Thank you, she said, but it sounded hollow, obligatory. Like something you say to a stranger who holds a door open, not something you say to the person you love who just gave you $10,000. I transferred the money that week. 250 million dong, wired directly to her mother's account. It was strange seeing that much money disappear with a few clicks. I'd worked for years to save it, lived frugally, made careful choices, and now it was just gone. Into a problem I didn't create. For a family that wasn't mine, because I loved someone. I thought there'd be relief after, some kind of gratitude or renewed warmth. Instead, there was distance. Lynn became someone I lived with but didn't really reach. She was polite, functional. She'd come home from work, ask about my day, share details about hers. We'd eat dinner together, watch shows, go through all the motions of a relationship. But the intimacy was gone. The easy affection, the way she used to touch my arm when making a point, the way she'd curl up against me on the couch, all of it evaporated. When I tried to talk about it, she'd deflect. I'm just stressed, she'd say. Work is busy. My family's going through a lot. I'm tired. All true. All also not the whole truth. I went to the restaurant one last time before they sold it. Her father was there, packing up kitchen equipment. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. When he saw me, he came over and gripped my hand with both of his. Thank you, Con, he said. Son, thank you for helping us. But he wouldn't meet my eyes. There was shame there, thick and suffocating. I'd helped him, but I'd also seen him at his lowest, seen his failure. And that created a gulf between us that gratitude couldn't bridge. Her mother was different, colder. She thanked me too, but it was perfunctory. When I tried to help pack dishes, she waved me away. We can do it, she said in Vietnamese. We don't need more help. The restaurant sold for less than they'd hoped, 280 million dong. Combined with my money, they had enough to pay off most of the debt, with a payment plan for the rest. The lenders accepted. The immediate threat dissolved. But so did everything else. The family moved to Long Bien District, a 40-minute drive from the city center, into a cramped 3-bedroom apartment in an old building. I helped them move, carrying boxes up 4 flights of stairs because there was no elevator. Min barely spoke to me the whole day. Her father organized boxes in silence. Her mother directed traffic but avoided looking at me directly. Lynn told me later, after we got back to our apartment, that her mother had said something. She asked why you only gave half, Lynn said quietly. She wanted to know if you didn't trust us, if you thought we were trying to take advantage of you. What did you say? I defended you. I said you were being smart, protecting yourself. But she just shook her head and said, that's not how family works. I'm not family though, I said, not officially. We're not married. Something flickered across her face. Pain, maybe, or realization. No, she said, we're not. Things deteriorated slowly, like a plant dying from lack of water. Not dramatic, just gradual withering. Lynn started spending more time with her family. She'd go to their apartment after work, come home at 9 or 10, exhausted and uncommunicative. Weekends she'd spend there, helping her mother adjust to the new neighborhood, helping men look for jobs, keeping her father company. When she was home, she was distant. We'd have conversations that felt like we were reading from scripts. How was your day? Fine. Yours? Fine. Like strangers in an elevator. I tried to bridge the gap. Suggested we take a trip, just the two of us. Get away for a weekend like we used to. She said she couldn't leave her family right now. I offered to cook her favorite meal. She said she wasn't hungry. I asked if we could talk about what was happening between us. She said there was nothing to talk about. She was just stressed. But I could feel her slipping away. Her extended family found out about the situation I don't know how, maybe through her mother, maybe through neighborhood gossip. Suddenly, aunts and uncles who'd been friendly before were cold. At a family gathering for someone's birthday, an uncle I'd met a few times pulled me aside. You know, in Vietnam, when someone becomes part of the family, they help completely, he said in careful English, not halfway. Not with conditions. They help because that's what family means. I did help, I said, trying to keep my voice even. You helped like a business partner, not like a son. I wanted to argue, to explain my reasoning, but I could see in his face that it wouldn't matter. The judgment was already made. I was the rich foreigner who'd failed the test. Lynn's friends started treating me differently too. Women she'd introduced me to, who'd been warm and welcoming, now gave me tight smiles and found reasons to pull Lynn away from conversations. I heard whispers, caught fragments. Could have solved everything. On. His savings. On. Doesn't really love her. I felt like I was being erased from her life in slow motion. 2 months after I'd transferred the money, I found out through a mutual friend that Lynn's father was gambling again. Nothing huge, small games, 50,000 or 100,000 dong bets. But he was back at it. The addiction hadn't stopped, hadn't even slowed. The debt I'd helped pay off hadn't fixed anything, just bought time. When I confronted Lynn about it, she defended him. He's struggling, she said. He lost his restaurant, his dignity. This is how he copes. By doing the exact thing that destroyed everything in the first place, you don't understand addiction. I understand enough to know that paying off someone's debt doesn't cure it. I understand enough to know I was right to be cautious. She looked at me with something like contempt. You're always right, aren't you? Always so logical, so smart. You figured it all out while the rest of us are just emotional and irrational. That's not what I'm saying. It's exactly what you're saying. You think you're better than us, more evolved. You helped us, but just enough to feel good about yourself. Not enough to actually solve anything. I gave you $10,000, Lynn. 10,000. How is that not enough? Because it wasn't about the money. Her voice cracked, and tears started streaming down her face. It was about what the money represented. It was about whether you actually loved me enough to go all in, to truly become part of this family, or whether you were always going to keep one foot out the door. That's not fair. I can love you and still have boundaries. Western boundaries, she spat. Western individualism. I'm not responsible for your family's problems. I need to protect myself. That's fine in Sweden, Eric, but you're not in Sweden. You're here. You're with me. Or at least I thought you were. I am with you. No. You're with a version of me that doesn't come with complications. A version that doesn't have a family in crisis, that doesn't need anything from you. But that's not real. I come with all of this, my father's addiction, my family's struggles, all the messy, difficult parts. And when I finally showed you those parts, you backed away. I didn't back away. I helped. Halfway, she said quietly. You helped halfway. And that told me everything I needed to know about how far you're willing to go. We didn't fight after that. We just existed in the same space, getting quieter and quieter until the silence became unbearable. 3 months after the initial revelation, Lynn told me she needed to move out. Not break up, she insisted, just move out. She needed to be closer to her family, needed to help them through this transition, needed space to think. Space to think about what, I asked, even though I knew. About whether this can work. Whether we're too different. Whether love is enough when culture pulls us in opposite directions. She packed her things over a weekend. I helped carry boxes down to Min's motorbike. He'd come to help her move. Barely acknowledging me, I watched her load up her life, piece by piece, and felt something breaking inside me that I knew wouldn't heal right. I still love you, she said before she left. I need you to know that. This isn't about not loving you. Then what's it about? It's about not being able to reconcile who you are with what I need. And maybe that's my fault. Maybe I asked too much. Or maybe you just couldn't give enough. I don't know anymore. She left. The apartment felt enormous and empty without her. I kept expecting her to come back, to text that she'd made a mistake, that we could work through this. But days turned into weeks. She responded to my messages, but they got shorter. I'm okay. Just need time. Talk soon. The conversations became breadcrumbs, just enough to keep me hoping, but never enough to actually sustain anything. I tried to stay busy, threw myself into work, took on extra projects, worked 12-hour days just to avoid thinking about the empty apartment. I met up with expat friends, went to bars, did the things single guys do in Hanoi, but everything felt hollow. One night, about 6 weeks after she'd moved out, I ran into one of her friends at a cafe in Taihu, a woman Lynn had gone to university with. She saw me and hesitated, clearly debating whether to acknowledge me or pretend she hadn't seen me. I made the choice for her. Hi, Mai. Eric. Hi, how are you? I'm okay. How's Lynn? Mai shifted uncomfortably. She's managing. It's been hard. Can you tell her I miss her? That I want to talk? Maya looked at me with something like pity. Eric, I think you should know. She's been seeing someone. Nothing serious yet, but there's a guy. Vietnamese. Someone her mother introduced her to. The words hit like a physical blow. I'd known it was over, had felt it ending, but hearing it confirmed like this made it real in a way I wasn't prepared for. Oh, I managed. Good, that's good for her. I'm sorry, Mai said, and she actually seemed to mean it. For what it's worth, I think she did love you. But sometimes love isn't enough when you come from different worlds. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak, and she left. I sat there for an hour, nursing a coffee that went cold, watching the lake, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The cafe where I'd met Lynn, the family dinners, the moment she'd come home crying, the choice I'd made, the slow unraveling of everything I thought I'd built. Was I wrong? Should I have just paid the full debt? Would that have saved us, or would it just have delayed the inevitable? I didn't know. I still don't know. I stayed in Vietnam for another 2 months, numb and confused. I couldn't bring myself to leave immediately. It felt like admitting defeat. But I also couldn't move forward. I was stuck in limbo, going through motions, existing, but not living. Lynn finally texted me directly about 3 months after she'd moved out. I think we should talk. Really talk. Can we meet? We met at a cafe near Hoan Ki Mei Lake. Not the one where we'd first met that would have been too painful. A neutral space. She looked different, tired, but also lighter somehow. Like she'd been carrying something heavy and had finally put it down. I wanted to tell you in person, she said. I'm seeing someone. It's new, but it's getting serious. And I needed you to hear it from me. Mai already told me. Oh. She looked down at her coffee. I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner. It's okay. We're not together. You don't owe me anything. I do, though. I owe you honesty. And the truth is, Eric, I loved you. I really did. But I also resented you for not understanding, for not being willing to fully commit to my family, for making me choose between you and them. That resentment poisoned everything, and I couldn't get past it. I was trying to protect both of us, I know. And maybe you were right. Maybe paying the full debt would have been stupid, would have enabled my father, would have made me dependent on you. But it didn't feel right at the time. It felt like rejection. Like you were telling me I wasn't worth going all in for. You were worth it, I said quietly. You were worth it. I just didn't know how to do both, love you completely, and also maintain boundaries that felt healthy. Maybe there wasn't a way to do both, she said. Maybe that's what culture clash really means. Not just different customs or languages, but fundamentally different ideas about what love requires, what family means, what you owe to the people you care about. We talked for another hour. It was honest and painful and necessary. By the end, we'd said goodbye in a way we hadn't before. Really goodbye, with finality. As I walked home through the old quarter, through the chaos of motorbikes and street vendors and the smell of fit sea simmering, I realized I couldn't stay anymore. This city that I'd loved, that had felt like home, now just reminded me of everything I'd lost. I gave notice on my apartment, packed up my life again, booked a flight back to Sweden. The day before I left, I went to Hoan Kiem Lake one last time, sat on a bench and watched couples walking hand in hand, families with kids, old men playing chess, young people taking selfies, all these lives intersecting, all these different stories. I thought about Lynn's concept of duyen, those invisible threads connecting people who are meant to meet. Maybe we were meant to meet. Maybe I needed to learn this lesson. Needed to understand my own limitations and values through trying and failing to bridge a gap I didn't know existed until I was standing in the middle of it. Back in Malmö now, 6 months later, the city is as gray as I remembered. The silence is thick. My apartment has those same floor-to-ceiling windows, same minimalist furniture. But I'm different. I know what it feels like to fall completely into someone else's world, to love someone enough to try to change your own understanding of what love means. I think about Lynn sometimes, wonder if she's happy, wonder if that Vietnamese guy her mother introduced her to gave her what I couldn't complete, unconditional commitment to her and everyone connected to her. I hope he did. I hope she has the kind of love that doesn't require negotiation or boundaries or compromise. But I also think I made the right choice, or at least the only choice I could live with. I helped, but I didn't enable. I showed love, but I maintained self-respect. Maybe that makes me the bad guy in her story, the foreigner who failed the test of family. Maybe her family still talks about me as the one who could have saved them, but chose not to. I don't know if there's a moral to this. I don't know if I'm supposed to have learned some clear lesson. All I know is that sometimes in love, there are no good choices, only the choice you can live with. And sometimes the person you love most in the world needs something from you that you can't give, not because you don't love them enough, but because giving it would require you to stop being who you are. I loved Lynn. I still do, in a way that aches when I let myself think about it, but I also couldn't be the person she needed me to be. And maybe that's just how some stories end, not with villains or heroes, just with two people who loved each other, but couldn't bridge the distance between their different understandings of what that love should look like. The gambling debt was never really about the money. It was about what the money represented: commitment, trust, whether I was willing to burn my ships and fully commit to a life and family and culture that would always ask more of me than I was comfortable giving. And when I hesitated, when I tried to find middle ground, I failed a test I didn't know I was taking. I'm not sure I'll ever know if I made the right choice, but it was my choice to make, and I made it, and now I live with it. In the gray silence of a Swedish winter, working from an empty apartment, occasionally seeing someone across a cafe and feeling my heart skip before realizing it's not her, could never be her, because she's in Hanoi living a life I'm not part of anymore. That's my story. Make of it what you will.